Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change. I'm here to guide you from frustration to flow in your life, bridging the practical and the woo, just for you. Let's go. All right, welcome to the week, Change Gang. I have a special fun guest with me today, Grant Offenberger. I'm glad you're here, Grant. Thanks for coming on and chatting with me.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Well, there you go. So we kind of follow each other a little bit back and forth and get sassy with each other online a lot. And I actually listened to a podcast you did a long time ago with Jason Linett, which that's how I started following you. That's how I kind of connected with you. Just so you know, you can chalk that one up to Jason's little show there. But I think I love some of the things that you put out and some of the things I'm curious about. And yeah, I'm thinking of all the things I want to dive into. And it's just like, which one do I go to first? Because one of the things, I have to ask this first off. You do wonderful, magical things with hypnosis, and you bring in a lot of other things, and you work with the person kind of on their own path. So it's not a, come on in and I'll give you 20 minutes and your life will be changed. It's let's work together. Let's do this. Let's make change happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that part. I love that part because I think it is not about the, one-hit wonders and trying to get it done in 20 minutes, like I said, or even an hour sometimes. Sometimes the change happens that fast, but sometimes it can be a little bit more, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that anything's wrong or that one person or another's not doing it right. It means you're doing it the way that person needs it to be done.
Oh, thank you. Froze.
With that said, you kind of dive into it with a couple different ways. One of them, I know you've been sharing a little bit about breath work. I want to maybe ask because I know that the breathing is an important part, but I don't work in breath work specifically. I know breath work is very specific in how it kind of is brought about. So what do you find is important in bringing the breath work specifically into working with your clients?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily educated in your formal breath work. I know a few techniques that will help regulate your nervous system or give you the results you're looking for in a matter of moments. I don't know those long breathwork techniques because it's not necessarily what I'm looking for. I came to the realization, and maybe I'm just crazy and making up nonsense, that people often are looking for control, and they typically will look to control their external world through imposition. Like, I don't like that you do that. You should live the way I think you should live. If that doesn't work, they'll resort to force. They'll start yelling or slamming doors or all sorts of different things. And if that doesn't work, they'll resort to avoidance. They'll ignore the problem or they'll run away from their issues. I mean, the deepest form of avoidance would be having thoughts of taking your own life because that's the only thing you think you have control of. And so if we baseline that awareness, how do we get it to being in control of your internal state, being in control of your perspective of life? Well, you can't really tell someone, oh, view it this way, and then everything's good. Baby steps. And I feel like the breath is the first thing that you are always in control of, whether you realize it or not. And so I do like to teach my clients a couple breathing techniques just to start that bridge of internal control, because whether they're aware of it or not, they're always in control of their breath.
I agree with that. Before I ever even did anything with hypnosis, but when I talked to people even with it, I think right before we hopped on, we were talking about a pattern interrupt. And I often talk to them, I don't know who did it, and you might, but there's, you can use a 16-second breath. It's that simple, where you count in and you hold and you count out and you kind of let it go. And it's 16 seconds, but in that 16 seconds, everything changes. Because you've just changed everything about what you're thinking about, what your body's doing, you're focusing differently, and so everything's changed right there. Is that a little bit about what you do with people?
Things like absolutely. It's your foot in the door of being able to change your internal states.
So, you just said 4 things that I want to talk about, but so with the breath thing, I think that's great. So it's something that just kind of little tiny things to help them along the way when you're doing some of the change work that you do. It helps them to kind of come into that center point. Because when we start hypnosis, it often is taking those first few breaths to kind of bring you into a different state. So it's a little bit of a state change. And I think that's pretty amazing. And you talk about control, and I'd never heard it put that way, but it was like, wow, yeah, suicide is actually the ultimate control. It is that moment of that. Unfortunately, it takes away all the rest of the control in that moment, but there's a lot of people that are in that state of making those decisions, those life and death decisions in the moment, and they feel very out of control. What's one of the things that maybe you would say to them or talk to them about? Is breath one of those things that just kind of instantly gives them that moment of control? And if so, what would be another one?
Yeah, so the breath is pretty much the first stage of what you could use as a pace and lead. You're always in control of the breath. Well, that's true. And then eventually you lead them into your control of your entire narrative of life. And there's gradual progressions from there. But if someone is so down and out, so doom and gloom that they have no control of anything other than if they live at all, can't really tell them to, focus on your breath. But maybe, but a good pattern interrupt is very powerful. That's actually how I found out about NLP, was watching Tony Robbins, not knowing what he was about, and seeing him pattern interrupt someone that was talking about them feeling suicidal, and then paced and leaded them out of that simply from a pattern interrupt. So you can interrupt that pattern with any number of ways. And yeah, focusing on the breath is a great first step. Focusing on the breath, focusing on the body, and leading it all the way to focusing on your perception.
Well, sometimes those tiny steps are the most important ones, because when somebody does feel out of control, I think, and they can just accomplish that one tiny thing, it brings them, so many people, I think even in the work that we do, so many people expect the change of feeling like hell, basically, feeling way down here, to feeling exuberant and joy and happiness. And it's not, that switch doesn't get flipped that way. It's that little ladder that you climb, that emotional thing that maybe you get out of feeling total crap today and you feel like not so good. And then maybe you take the little tiny step to, meh, not great, but better than yesterday. And then you continue that step. And that somehow brings you back to hope, to being okay, to maybe being happy, to maybe feeling joyful, to all those things. Those little tiny steps, I think, are super key for certain people to find that little tiny control. Do you find that with the people that are really in a difficult place?
Oh yeah. I mean, people can discredit little tiny steps all they want, but even the smallest of steps is at least putting you in the right direction. And from there, you can take it anywhere you need to go.
Yes, and so I have to go while we're in this subject right here with control and those types of things, because when we talked and you kind of gave me some information about what to chat about, one of the things that you mentioned was hypnosis used in cults and media, which are kind of the same thing, but different. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me what you talk about in that, because that is all about control. So,
Well, I've always been interested in the influence within media, politics. I love the debates, infomercials even. They were just always so amazing and I didn't know why. And then I became really fascinated in cults, and I wanted to learn all about all sorts of different cults, and I still do. And they were completely fascinating too, and I didn't know why. I didn't know how were they able to capture everyone's attention like that? How are they able to make them think, do, and feel certain ways that they otherwise might not have? I thought it was completely fascinating. And just through my own curiosity, I was like, what's this Tony Robbins guy? Is he a cult? Let me check him out. And I'm watching this video and I watch him pattern or interrupt a guy that is feeling suicidal. And I go, I don't know hypnosis, but that's it. I don't know what that was. And I looked up Tony Robbins hypnosis on Google, found out about NLP, and the rest was history from there. And it's even cooler studying cults with the knowledge of hypnosis, of NLP, of influence, and seeing, oh, they're doing this, 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 and this. And to this day, I still get to go experience cults and study them. And it's interesting because you typically would think cults, like all of them, are scary and evil and mean. But I've noticed that even being honest with them, they're fairly accepting. They're probably scary and evil and mean to the people deep in them, but to the outsiders, it's not as scary. And so you could do a lot of interesting research on them and be completely honest at the same time.
I'm sorry, I'm over here laughing because, like, well, they're not that evil, but maybe if we get too far in, it is. Yeah, we don't want to, but I think, we all kind of have our own little cults. We all have these groups. And one of the things you said, first of all, when we came on this, made me really think about that. And this too, cults, media, politics, all of that, especially with the world right now. But one of the things you said is, when people don't agree with you or not in that thing, I think we see so much of that right now, especially with all the kind of political realm here in the United States right now, with so much of it, so much of the contrast going on. And it's interesting to see all the words that people use and all the anger that comes from it. Like you said, they throw fits, they get angry because you're not believing the same thing that they're believing, and then they get mad, and then they kind of throw their stuff and go take their ball and go play somewhere else. That's happening with so many people right now. What do you think makes a difference in cults or in situations like that where you can kind of come together and not have those reactions? Is it totally an individual thing, or does it happen in the group?
Well, I mean, when you get into the cult, you're then playing a completely different game. And now there's a new in-out dynamic, and it's you and the group versus the whole rest of the world. And so it really changes those control dynamics because you're no longer an individual. A lot of these control dynamics are through our Western society of individualism rather than collectivism. And so when you go through cults, it really changes that dynamic. And yet it can be easier to control them because you're playing a whole new game that's far more entertaining than the other game. The game of just the normal world is far less entertaining than the game within the cult. And so if there's an in-out group like that, you have to comply or you don't get to play the game anymore. And this game is far more entertaining. Saving the world from enslavement and a doomsday clock that's coming is going to be far more entertaining than working your 9 to 5, going home and watching TV.
That's true. It gives you purpose. It gives you something to do, something to be a part of. And when you're in that type of a situation, some people, you say cult, like I said earlier, people perk up. They're like, what? What are you talking about? What? And they will, something they don't like, or a group or an organization, they will call a cult. Because those people think a certain way, or because these people think a certain way, they'll say that, oh, God, you're in a cult. Do you realize you're in a cult? And they say it in a really derogatory way. But it is a bit of groupthink. But for people who get afraid, we're talking a little bit about hypnosis too, because that's the path that we're both on. And the NLP, which I love, to me, they combine NLP and hypnosis because, the NLP is so much about the word patterns and the word things that kind of come into the play of hypnosis for me. How do you help people not be afraid of that happening? Oh my God, if I get that, what if you control my mind? What if you do this? They bring up stage hypnosis and they bring up all these things. But I often tell them, especially with stage hypnosis, you have to remember that those people agreed to be up there doing what they're doing. They said, okay, I'm open. Let's do this. If you don't agree with something, that's not going to happen. Basically, at the very depths of yourself, don't want to do something. I can't make you do that. That's not how that's going to play. But what do you say to people? Because I know it's got to be somewhere you're entertaining about how you kind of talk to people about hypnosis and NLP.
Yeah. So strangely enough, most of my clients know nothing about hypnosis, which is interesting. So they often don't even have the wrong idea. But even if they have the wrong idea, I emphasize that all hypnosis is focused attention, and we're using therapeutic techniques within that focused attention. And so they get a somewhat of an idea there. And I really emphasize that they're in control the whole time. That's a huge thing. So I always tell them, once you're confident that you have the control to relax your eyelids so much so that they're just not worth opening, and word patterns like that where I'm constantly telling them they're in control and I'm very permissive with it all. And so it usually isn't an issue for them coming in when I explain that it's just focused attention, when I can use an analogy or a metaphor like watching television. Well, they've all watched television before and they knew that the TV didn't make them do anything they didn't want to do. And so that really eases them. Also, a lot of humor really just breaks up any of that tension from the beginning.
Not only did you step in and start to learn about it and share with your clients, you decided to start teaching other people about it as well, correct? Is that correct?
To a degree, I decided to do like seminars, touring around, teaching things in that manner. As far as my actual teaching at the college, they reached out to me. I guess word got around and they wanted me, so they invited me to dinner. I didn't know what was going on, and then they asked me to be the teacher. I was like, sure. And so, yeah, that really takes up a good amount of my focus. I love being able to teach people this stuff because I love it so much. So I get to just talk about it for hours on end and they have to sit there and listen and they paid me for that. And so I spoil them because I try to give them everything I wish I had at that when I was in their stage. So I worksheets and online portal that they can log in anywhere, drop down box of different definitions. I record each class, put it up on their portal. I try to get every little thing that'll really make a difference for them. And now I'm getting volunteers to come in for them to practice on each week. So it's been it's been a privilege. The teaching itself doesn't pay nearly like a session does. So it's more of really a passion than anything. I mean, it does pay, but it's hourly. It's not like I'm doing that for the money. It's just so nice to be able to train more hypnotists.
So what are you training? What are you teaching them about? Are you teaching them about all of the stuff about hypnosis and NLP? Are you teaching them how to do it? Or are you just teaching them about it?
I'm teaching them how to do it, they're going to get certified. Their credits actually can transfer over as CE credits if they want to be marriage and family therapists, anything like that. So they're going to have a real comprehensive education on how to do it. They've been practicing on each other. Now they're going to practice on strangers, from start to finish, from an intake to inductions to techniques. Everything in between, they're learning it all. And so it's been a fun journey. And sometimes when they're learning something that's so outside of their frame of reference, you can see they get a little frustrated, but then the next week they get it and everything's flowing so perfectly.
Wow, that's so cool. I can't imagine that with your mind and your curiosity that you don't continue to move into learning more and more about. It's kind of I don't know, it's like tattoos and potato chips, I guess. You just keep going for more and more and more, right? I mean, you don't just go for one. I don't know anybody that's just done one hypnosis course and doesn't go explore. It's like open the doors and there's this vastness of information when you start being in that. What's one of the things that you've come across lately that you dove into and have found interesting and fun?
Oh yes, I'm always learning more things because it's my passion. This is all I do all day, every day. And lately, I've been slightly digging into this online course with Steve Andreas, and that's been pretty interesting. It's an NLP course. I just got back from San Diego. I was David Snyder's guest for regression specialization, and that was a really interesting week. That was definitely an interesting week. It was also fun. One day after the class, we then had a mini class where we were doing instant inductions, rapid inductions. That was really fun too, to practice with all these different people. And so just try to scatter it everywhere. I'm starting to learn stage hypnosis more. When I was at David Snyder's events, I was really hitting it off with Richard Rumble. And so he's taking me to his shows and showing me the ropes basically. And so I'm always learning every angle that I can. I'm always talking on ChatGPT, asking it to teach me anything I might not know about NLP. And so I have interesting conversations with the robot too.
Oh my gosh, who isn't right now? I mean, I know there's some people aren't, but I have been doing more and more too with that. And I I don't know if you know Lori Hammond, but she's in there. She will tell you about 3 or 4 or 5 different AIs. She's used one that's been coaching her through some life things, and she'll do it in different ways. Coach me as Tony Robbins, or coach me as Milton Erickson, or coach me as whoever. And she goes through and does this information, and it's so cool what comes up. I've done that a few times where it's, tell me this as Milton Erickson, or tell me this through Richard Bandler, or come up, and they're very different. And so it's very fascinating. And then it's like blend them together and show me what that would look like. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to do that. They don't
Definitely.
talk to me yet, and so I guess they're still not going to replace us just yet, which is a great point right there. I'm curious what you think about this, because I know what I think about this, but I would love your opinion. A lot of people, somebody was just asking the other day about, they had someone that just wants a recording. They just want to, I don't know, lose weight or clear anxiety or something it was. And I said, they're great. They're great to have for backup, and they're great for whatever, but I think the best thing is always to work together. I think there's a different kind of energy that comes into play when you are working, even on here, like with you and I think it creates a different kind of energy live, whether it's in person or online, than it does as a recording. Do you find that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so different. I mean, one is basically better or worse reading a script at you if it's an audio, which has its time and place, which works to a degree. But the other one is in real time responding to your reactions, to your movements, to your ideomotor signals, to your breathing patterns, to your external trance indications. There's so much more going on in person. And I've really fought that because I don't do recordings. And because I'm like, oh, it's so different than doing it in person. But I've come to the realization that something is better than nothing. And so I should start doing them so they have something to jump on, or they have something to listen to in between sessions. So it does have its place, but nothing beats the real thing.
I don't think so either. I think there's just an energy that's there. And like you said, I find I have 1 or 2 clients who don't like to be on video. And it's harder for me because I can't see. So I'm really listening. I'm really trying to hear their breath, or if they're moving around or anything like that, just so that I can respond with going, maybe a little more deepening, or a little more of this, or to bring them out a little quicker if I need to do something like that. But I think energy plays such a big deal in the work that we do, just in being people. I think as people, we need that energetic connection. That's kind of my woo world coming out a little bit, but I that's just the information that I've found, or the things that I've found. So I was curious. And yes, you probably should do a few recordings,
Right.
fun ones. Make some fun ones, because you would just make people, they'd probably be laughing through half of it. I'm curious too. And right now, I know that we're kind of we've already talked for almost 30 minutes, so I'm going to be closing it up pretty quick, but I want to have another conversation with you. So we'll manage that as well. Tell me a little bit about the people that you work with the most right now.
Yeah, so I never really niched down. I know it's good for business, but I wanted to taste the rainbow, And so I just would see anyone, even at the start when I wasn't confident or comfortable in knowing what I was doing. I just told them, well, pay me what you think it's worth, because I don't want to charge them and not do a good job. And so I saw everyone for everything, for the weirdest things. But lately, I noticed that most things boil down to some sort of trauma, some sort of initial sensitizing event that you have to work through. So it may take many shapes, forms, and colors, but it oftentimes comes from some sort of trauma.
Yeah, I'm finding that. Too. When I work with people, and trauma is such an interesting word, because people think they don't have trauma. And yet when you start talking to them, or even they don't remember, trauma can be, if you're 2 years old, an argument between your parents with a bit of a raised voice can anchor into your body as a trauma. Is it a trauma now? No. Would it have even been a trauma a couple years later? Probably not. But in that moment, that's something significant. And that's what trauma is, something significant that kind of anchors in. I love that you said that, but you said something in there I have to ask one more thing about. What's one of the weirdest things that somebody's come to you for? You said you've had a lot of weird things. Tell me one of them.
Well, let me think of ones. that are all ages friendly.
Yes, let's do that.
Sure. So I've had people for all sorts of things. This one lady wanted to eat more oatmeal. I think that was probably the most obscure one that's not very controversial. She wanted to eat more oatmeal. So that was an interesting one. She came in the next week that she was eating too much oatmeal, and we figured out, well, why do you even want to eat oatmeal in the first place? But yeah, all sorts of interesting characters.
I know, and I start talking to people about things. They're like, and I say, well, when I'm talking to them, it's like, do you have any phobias? Flying, snakes, buttons, bananas? Do you have anything? And they just kind of look at me. I'm like, no, you'd be surprised.
Right.
What people have phobias of. They can have phobias of the funniest things. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, I saw someone for a fear of flying when I was barely starting out and I wasn't educated on ab reactions, and I was like, why is this lady profusely pouring water out of her eyeballs? And from that point forward, I made sure to keep tissues on me because I didn't even have tissues back then, and then learned all about ab reactions. She's still
Those
flying
are
to this
fun
day.
things.
We're Facebook friends.
I've had that in myself, actually, when I had someone doing hypnosis with me, and I didn't realize they were practicing doing something. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Hand up, I'll do it. But what had happened was I had just gone through and was still kind of going through some situations with long COVID, and it messed with my brain a lot when I had it. And so it took away, I had memory issues and kind of some cognitive issues and things like that. So here I am, and I volunteer for the thing that says, oh, we're going to do a forget your number, forget your name, something like that. And I remember when she was doing it, as soon as she said, okay, you're going to forget this, it was like, no, no way, not going to do that, because I had been dealing with such difficulty in that anyway. And I could feel myself like freaking out inside. And I think one of them kind of worked and one of them didn't work. And when I came out, a little bit, I told her, I said, I didn't even think I didn't think about it. That was not a good thing for me to do. So yeah, we try not to go. I always think about that now. It's like, if I do something, are you okay with water? If I use a water scene, are you okay with trains? Are you okay with whatever? So I ask them ahead of time what's going into that. Well, thank you so much just for the fun conversation and for sharing a little bit about what you do and how you do it, and for talking about a little bit about cults with me.
Oh yeah, anytime.
That was game on for me. So I would love for you to share, of course, I'll have it in the information in the show notes, how people can reach out to you and connect with you.
Yeah, so they can reach me at grantmepeace.com. Grant is my name, and then mepeace.com. And that has everything on there. That has all my social media on it. That has my school. That has upcoming events, free content, blogs, vlogs, everything you could possibly want in the world of Grant is on grantmepeace.com.
That sounds good. I don't think I've explored all your free stuff. I'm going to have to go over there and have a look. Free stuff is fun.
Right.
So thanks for chatting with me, Grant. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Change Gang. I hope you go off into the week. You have a wonderful one. I hope you go look up Grant and have some fun with him, because you will. I hope that you also meet me here, same time next week. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting to you in some way and fun. If so, hey, find someone to share it with. Maybe they need to hear it too, or maybe they'll just enjoy it. If you'd like, go ahead and grab my tips on supercharging your success. It includes a free short meditation to do just that. You can find that at bit.ly/supercharge your success. Until next time, happy day.